My wife sneaked into my mother's room every night, so I set up a hidden camera. My name is Peter Scow. I'm 40 years old, and I live with my wife Marcia and my 68-year-old mother Christina. After my father passed away 2 years ago, I brought my mother to live with us so she wouldn't be alone. I thought I was doing the right thing, giving her a home filled with love and care. If you're just starting to listen this story now, take a deep breath and maybe grab some tissues, because what I'm about to tell you is something that still haunts me every single night. Something I never imagined could happen under my own roof to the woman who gave me life. What I discovered completely shattered my marriage, my trust, and my understanding of the person I thought I knew best. This story is especially for aging parents, anyone who has aging parents, and anyone who's ever worried about leaving a loved one in someone else's care. Because sometimes the monster isn't a stranger in a nursing home. Sometimes it's sleeping right next to you at night. Sometimes evil wears the face of someone you love, someone you chose to build a life with. And the victims? They're too ashamed, too scared, or too broken to speak up. Let's go back to the day it all started. The phone call came on a Tuesday afternoon. I was in the middle of a budget meeting when my phone buzzed insistently in my pocket. I ignored it at first. We were deep into quarterly projections. But then it buzzed again, and again. When I glanced down and saw it was the hospital, my stomach dropped. Dad had collapsed at the grocery store, a massive heart attack. He was gone before the ambulance even arrived. The funeral was a blur of black clothes and casseroles, and people saying things like, "At least he didn't suffer," and "He lived a good life." But none of it mattered, because my mother, my strong, independent, always smiling mother, looked like she'd aged 20 years overnight. She stood at the graveside, her hand gripping mine so tightly I thought my fingers might break, and I could feel her whole body trembling. 45 years of marriage ended in an instant at a Kroger checkout line. In the weeks that followed, I drove to her house every evening after work. The house where I'd grown up. The house that had always been filled with Dad's terrible jokes and Mom's laughter and the smell of something delicious cooking. Now it felt like a mausoleum. Mom would be sitting in Dad's chair, staring at nothing, a cold cup of tea on the table beside her. She'd barely eaten. She'd barely spoken. She was disappearing right in front of me. "Mom, you can't keep going like this," I told her one evening, crouching beside the chair. "You're not eating. You're not sleeping." "I'm fine, Peter," she said in that hollow voice I'd come to dread. "I just need time." But I knew better. This wasn't grief that would heal with time. This was grief that would consume her if someone didn't intervene. I thought about assisted living facilities, retirement communities, all the options people suggest when a parent can no longer manage alone. But every time I imagined my mother in one of those places, sitting in a sterile room, surrounded by strangers, waiting for visiting hours, my chest tightened with guilt. That night, I talked to Marcia. We were sitting in bed, and I'd been turning the problem over in my mind for hours. "I think we should ask Mom to move in with us," I said. Marcia looked up from her phone, surprised. "Really? I can't leave her there alone. She's falling apart, Marcia. Dad was her whole world. If she stays in that house by herself..." I couldn't finish the sentence. Marcia set down her phone and took my hand. "Then we bring her here," she said simply. "Peter, of course we do. She's your mother. She shouldn't be alone." Relief flooded through me. "You're sure? It's a big change. I know we've talked about maybe starting a family soon, and having my mother here would..." "We'll figure it out," Marcia interrupted, squeezing my hand. Family takes care of family. That's what you always say, right? Besides, I'd love to have her here. She can teach me all her recipes. We can have game nights. It'll be good for all of us. I pulled her into a hug, grateful beyond words. This was why I'd married her. This compassion, this willingness to open our home and our lives. In that moment, I loved her more than ever. Mom resisted at first, of course. She didn't want to be a burden. She didn't want to intrude on our lives. She insisted she could manage on her own. But I could see through the protests to the fear underneath. The fear of those empty rooms, the silence, the loneliness. It took 3 weeks of gentle persuasion, but eventually she agreed. Moving day was bittersweet. Watching Mom walk through her house one last time, touching things, remembering. Dad's favorite coffee mug, the spot where he always hung his jacket, the chair he'd sat in every evening. She cried quietly as we loaded boxes into the truck, and I found myself crying too. This wasn't just a move. It was the closing of a chapter, the end of the life she'd built with my father. But when we pulled up to our house with her belongings, something shifted. Marcia was waiting on the porch with flowers and a welcome sign she'd made. She'd cleared out the guest room and redecorated it with furniture from Mom's old bedroom, making it feel familiar. She'd even hung up the photos Mom loved, pictures of Dad, of me as a kid, of family vacations. "Welcome home, Christina," Marcia said, hugging her. "This is your home now, for as long as you want it to be." Mom cried again, but this time they were different tears. "Thank you," she whispered. "Thank you both so much." That first month was an adjustment. Learning to share space, establishing routines, figuring out the dynamics of 3 adults in one household. But slowly, remarkably, I started to see glimpses of my old mother returning. She'd join us for breakfast, help with dinner, tell stories about Dad that made us all laugh even as we cried. The color started coming back to her cheeks. She started sleeping through the night. Marcia was incredible with her. She'd sit with Mom in the afternoons, drinking tea and chatting about everything and nothing. She'd insist Mom come grocery shopping with her, get out of the house, see people. She'd bring home books from the library she thought Mom would like. When Mom had bad days, and there were still bad days, Marcia would be there with patience and kindness. "You picked a good one," Mom told me one evening. "I can see why you love her." "She loves you too, Mom," I said. And I believed it with my whole heart. By the 6-month mark, our household had found its rhythm. Friday nights became movie nights. The 3 of us on the couch with popcorn, watching old classics that made Mom nostalgic in a good way. Sunday mornings meant big family breakfasts with pancakes and bacon and too much coffee. Mom started gardening again, planting flowers in our backyard, something she hadn't had the energy for in months. She joined a book club at the local library. She started calling her old friends again. "Peter, look at this," she'd say, showing me a flower just starting to bloom. "Your father would have loved this. He always said I had magic hands with plants." She talked about Dad more now, but it wasn't the devastating grief of those early months. It was remembrance, celebration, the kind of love that doesn't die just because a person does. She laughed more. She ate every meal. She started doing the crossword puzzle every morning, just like she used to. I thought I was doing the right thing. I thought I was being a good son. Bringing her into our home, giving her a place to heal, watching her come back to life. It felt like the best decision I'd ever made. Marcia seemed happy too. She'd tell her friends about how wonderful it was having Christina around, how she'd always wanted to be close with her mother-in-law, how it felt like they were building this beautiful, multi-generational home. "You saved me, Peter," Mom said one evening. We were sitting on the back porch, watching the sunset paint the sky in oranges and pinks. "After your father died, I didn't want to keep going, but you gave me a reason. You and Marcia gave me a home and a purpose. I don't know what I'd do without you both." "You never have to find out, Mom," I said, hugging her. "You're staying right here with us. This is your home now." I meant every word. In that moment, watching my mother smile for the first time in months, seeing that spark back in her eyes, I felt like the luckiest son in the world. We were a family. We were happy. Everything was exactly as it should be. Looking back now, I realize that period, those first 6 beautiful months, was the eye of the storm. The calm before everything fell apart. Because what I didn't know, what I couldn't have known, was that something was shifting in Marcia. Something dark and jealous and cruel was taking root beneath that facade of daughterly affection. While I was congratulating myself on being such a devoted son, while I was praising my wife for her kindness and patience, a nightmare was beginning to take shape. But in that moment, sitting on the porch with Mom as the sun set, I knew none of that. I thought we were all happy. I thought I'd saved my mother from loneliness and grief. I thought bringing her home was the answer to everything. I had no idea it was the beginning of the worst nightmare of our lives. I had no idea that the person I trusted most would become my mother's tormentor. And I had no idea that 6 months later, I'd be installing a hidden camera in my mother's room, desperate to prove what I already feared in my heart, that something terrible was happening in the darkness of our home. But that night, none of that had happened yet. That night, we were still happy. That night, I still believed in the illusion of the perfect family I thought we'd created. It started so gradually that at first I convinced myself I was imagining things. Month 7. That's when I noticed the first real crack in what I'd thought was our perfect family harmony. I came home from work on a Thursday evening, loosening my tie as I walked through the door, expecting to find Mom and Marcia in the kitchen preparing dinner like they'd been doing for weeks. Instead, the kitchen was empty except for Marcia, who was stirring something on the stove with more force than necessary. "Where's Mom?" I asked, kissing her cheek. "In her room," Marcia said without looking at me. "She said she wasn't feeling well." I frowned. "Is she sick? Should I check on her?" "I already did. She just wants to rest." Marcia finally turned to me, her smile not quite reaching her eyes. "She's fine, Peter. Just a headache." But when I knocked on Mom's door a few minutes later, she looked anything but fine. She was sitting on her bed in the dim light, still fully dressed, staring at her hands. "Mom? Marcia said you have a headache. Can I get you anything?" No, I'm all right," she said quickly, but she didn't look up. "I'm just tired. You two go ahead and eat without me." "Are you sure? You love Marcia's chicken piccata?" "I'm not very hungry tonight, sweetheart. I'll just have some tea later." It was such a small thing. One missed dinner, one headache. People get tired. People aren't always hungry. I told myself it meant nothing as I ate dinner alone with Marcia, the empty chair at the table seeming larger than it should have been. But then it happened again the next night. And the night after that. By the end of the second week, Mom had joined us for dinner maybe twice. The rest of the time she stayed in her room with excuses that sounded increasingly hollow. Not hungry, feeling tired, stomach upset, just wanting to read. Maybe she needs to see a doctor, I suggested to Marcia one evening as we cleaned up after another meal without Mom. It's depression, Peter, Marcia said, scraping uneaten food into the trash. She's been doing so well, but grief doesn't follow a schedule. She's probably hitting a rough patch. It's normal. These things come in waves. That made sense. I wanted it to make sense. Grief was complicated and unpredictable. Of course, Mom would have bad days, bad weeks even. But as the days turned into weeks, I started noticing other things. The weight loss was the first thing that really scared me. Mom had always been slender, but now her clothes hung loose on her frame. Her cheekbones stood out too sharply. Her wrists looked fragile, like bird bones. When I hugged her, I could feel her ribs. "Mom, you're getting too thin," I said one morning when I caught her making coffee. "Are you eating enough?" "I eat plenty," she said, but she wouldn't meet my eyes. "I'm just not as hungry as I used to be. It happens when you get older. You're 68, not 90, and you've lost at least 15 pounds since you moved in. That's not normal." "Peter, please don't fuss," she said, and there was something sharp in her voice I wasn't used to hearing. "I'm fine. I'm an adult. I can manage my own meals." She walked away before I could respond, leaving me standing in the kitchen feeling like I'd been scolded by a stranger. This wasn't the mother I knew. She'd never been snippy or defensive with me. We'd always been able to talk about anything. Then there were the dark circles under her eyes, deep purple shadows that makeup couldn't hide, the kind you got from weeks of poor sleep. Her eyes themselves looked different too, hollow, haunted, like she was carrying some invisible weight that grew heavier every day. One evening, I was working late in my home office when I heard a crash from the kitchen. I rushed out to find Mom standing over a broken plate, her whole body shaking. "I'm sorry, I'm so sorry," she kept saying, bending down to pick up the pieces with trembling hands. "I didn't mean to. The noise startled me and I dropped it." "Mom, it's okay? It's just a plate," I said, kneeling beside her. "Let me get this. You'll cut yourself." But she was already crying, tears streaming down her face over a broken plate. The sound that had startled her had been nothing, just Marcia opening a cabinet in the next room. But Mom had jumped like it was a gunshot. Hey, it's all right," I said, putting my arm around her. "Nobody's mad. Plates break. It's not a big deal." I know," she sobbed. "I don't know why I'm so jumpy lately. I'm sorry." Marcia appeared in the doorway. "What happened?" Mom immediately stiffened against me. "I dropped a plate," she said, her voice suddenly flat. "I'll replace it." "Don't be silly, Christina," Marcia said, but something in her tone made me uncomfortable. "We have plenty of plates. Peter, you should finish your work. I'll help your mother clean this up." I didn't want to leave, but Mom was already pulling away from me, wiping her eyes. "Go on, dear. I'm fine. Just being emotional over nothing." Other changes piled up like snow accumulating before an avalanche. Mom's phone would ring, her friend Margaret from book club or Susan from church, and she'd stare at it like it was something dangerous before letting it go to voicemail. The gardening tools sat unused in the shed. The library books went unread on her nightstand. The crossword puzzles lay blank in the newspaper. "Has Mom seemed off to you?" I asked Marcia one night in bed. "She's grieving, Peter. We've been through this. It's been almost a year since Dad died. She was doing so much better. Now she's worse than she was at the beginning." "Grief isn't linear," Marcia said. turning off her bedside lamp. Give her time, and stop hovering. You're probably making her feel self-conscious about needing support. Was I hovering? Was I making things worse? The doubt crept in, undermining my instincts. Maybe I was being overprotective. Maybe Mom just needed space to process her emotions. Maybe I was the problem, constantly checking on her, questioning her, watching her too closely. But then came the moment that changed everything. It was a Saturday afternoon. Marcia had gone to the gym, something she did every Saturday without fail. I was in the living room, supposedly reading the news on my tablet, but really just thinking about Mom when I heard her door open. She came out slowly, like someone walking through water, and jumped when she saw me. "Oh, Peter, I didn't know you were home." "Just me," I said, trying to sound casual. "Marcia's at the gym. Do you want to watch a movie? We haven't done that in a while." Something flickered across her face. Hope, maybe, or longing. I would like that. Yes. We sat on opposite ends of the couch at first, but halfway through the movie, some old comedy Dad used to love, I noticed Mom crying silently. Not sad crying. Something else. Something that looked like relief. "Mom? What's wrong?" She reached over and grabbed my hand, gripping it so tightly her knuckles went white. Her whole arm was trembling. When she spoke, her voice was barely a whisper. "Peter," she said, and there was something desperate in her eyes. "Peter, please. Please don't leave me alone with her." The words didn't make sense at first. "With who? What do you mean?" "Please," she whispered again. And now there were tears streaming down her face. "Please don't. Christina? Peter?" Marcia's voice from the doorway hit like a lightning strike. I watched in horror as my mother transformed in an instant. Her hand released mine like she'd touched fire. Her face shifted into a smile so fake it looked painted on. Her whole body language changed from desperate to casual so quickly it gave me whiplash. "Oh, Marcia," Mom said in a bright, hollow voice. "You're back already? How was the gym?" "Fine," Marcia said slowly, looking between us. Her gym bag hung from her shoulder, her face flushed from exercise, but her eyes were sharp and cold. "What are you two watching?" "Just an old movie," I said, but my voice sounded strange to my own ears. "Dad's favorite." "How nice," Marcia said. "Christina, didn't you say you needed to call Margaret back?" "She called again while I was out." "Oh, yes. Yes, I should do that," Mom said, already standing up, already moving toward her room like she couldn't get away fast enough. "Mom, wait!" I started, but she was gone, her door clicking shut behind her with a finality that made my stomach turn. I looked at Marcia. She was smiling at me, but it wasn't her real smile. It was something else, something I couldn't quite name, but that made the hair on the back of my neck stand up. "You're being so sweet with her," Marcia said, coming to sit beside me. "But honey, you have to let her have some independence. She's probably embarrassed about how much she's been leaning on you lately." She wasn't leaning on me. She was trying to tell me something. "She's depressed, Peter. Sometimes depressed people say things that don't make sense. That's why she needs professional help, not just you constantly asking if she's okay." The words sounded reasonable. The tone was gentle. But something was wrong. Something was very, very wrong. Because I'd seen the fear in my mother's eyes. I'd heard the desperation in her voice. And most chilling of all, I'd watched her transform the instant Marcia appeared. Like an actor stepping back into character. Like someone who'd been caught doing something forbidden. Please don't leave me alone with her." The words echoed in my head as I sat there pretending to watch the movie, Marcia's hand in mine, my mother hiding in her room 20 feet away. I'd never seen my mother look at anyone like that, with that kind of raw, primal fear. And she'd been looking at my wife. After that Saturday afternoon, I became a detective in my own home. I started watching everything, not just Mom, but Marcia too. The way they interacted, the things that were said, and, more importantly, the things that weren't. I felt guilty about it, like I was betraying my wife by questioning her, but I couldn't shake what I'd seen in my mother's eyes. That kind of fear doesn't come from nowhere. The first concrete evidence appeared on a Tuesday morning. I was running late for work, rushing around the house trying to find my car keys, when I saw Mom coming out of the bathroom. She was wearing a short-sleeved shirt, and there on her wrist were bruises, dark purple marks, finger-shaped, circling her thin wrist like a grotesque bracelet. "Mom," I said, catching her arm gently. "What happened here?" She pulled away so fast she nearly stumbled. "It's nothing. I'm just clumsy." "Those are finger marks." "Did someone grab you?" No. I fell in the bathroom the other day. I grabbed the counter to steady myself. That's all." But she wouldn't look at me, and she was already moving toward her room, cradling her wrist against her chest. I was still standing there, staring at the space where she'd been, when Marcia came around the corner. "What's wrong?" she asked. "You look upset." "Mom has bruises on her wrist. Bad ones." Marcia sighed, setting down her coffee mug. "I know. She fell a few days ago. I've been telling her to be more careful, but she insists she doesn't need a cane or anything. The doctor said elderly people bruise easily. Their skin gets thinner. She's 68, not 88. Peter, she is getting older. You have to accept that. She's not as steady on her feet as she used to be. It's hard for you to see, I know, but it's the reality of aging." It sounded reasonable. Elderly people did bruise easily. They did become more prone to falls, but those bruises looked exactly like someone had grabbed her wrist and held it tight. Too tight. I was 10 minutes late to work that day, unable to stop thinking about those finger-shaped marks. The medication discovery came next. I was looking for batteries in the kitchen drawer when I found a pill organizer that wasn't the one Mom usually used. This one was hidden at the back, beneath dish towels and rubber bands. When I opened it, I recognized Mom's medications, the blood pressure pills, the cholesterol medication, but the schedule was all wrong. Mom took her blood pressure medication once in the morning. This organizer had doses scheduled for morning and night, double what her doctor prescribed. "What are you doing?" I spun around to find Marcia in the doorway, her eyes fixed on the pill organizer in my hand. "Why is Mom's medication schedule different?" I asked. "This isn't what Dr. Harrison prescribed." Marcia crossed the room quickly and took the organizer from me. "Her doctor adjusted her dosage last month. I told you about it." "No, you didn't." "I did, Peter. You probably just forgot. You've been so stressed with that new project at work." She put the organizer back in the drawer, covering it with the dish towels. "I handle all her medical appointments. You know that. I make sure she takes everything she's supposed to take. I want to see the documentation from her doctor." Marcia's jaw tightened. "Are you seriously questioning whether I'm properly managing your mother's health care? After everything I do for her? After I rearranged my entire life to become her full-time caregiver? I just want to see—" "No," she said, her voice sharp. "No, Peter. I'm not going to justify myself to you. I'm the one who takes her to every appointment. I'm the one who sits with her in waiting rooms. I'm the one who fills her prescriptions and makes sure she takes them on time. And now you're accusing me of what? Trying to hurt her? I never said that. You implied it, and it's insulting. Tears welled up in her eyes, perfect crystalline tears that would have convinced anyone. I love your mother. I've been doing everything I can to help her, and this is the thanks I get? I felt like I'd been slapped. Marcia, I'm sorry. I didn't mean to suggest. Save it, she said, brushing past me. I need some air. She left the house and I stood alone in the kitchen, feeling like the worst husband in the world. Was I being paranoid? Was I reading sinister intentions into innocent actions? Marcia was right. She did handle all of Mom's medical care. She'd been nothing but devoted. But I couldn't shake the feeling that something was very wrong. That evening, Mom's friend Margaret called the house phone. I answered, expecting to hand it to Mom, but Margaret's first words stopped me cold. Oh, Peter, I'm so glad to catch you. I've been trying to reach your mother for 3 months. I call every week, but she never answers or calls back. Is she all right? I'm getting quite worried. 3 months, I said. But Mom's phone is always... I stopped, realization hitting me like ice water. Margaret, let me check on some things. I'll have Mom call you back. Please do, dear. We miss her at book club. She hasn't come since May. After Margaret hung up, I went to Mom's room. She was sitting on her bed, staring at nothing. Mom, Margaret called. She says she's been trying to reach you for months. Mom's face went pale. Oh, I've been meaning to call her back. I just haven't felt up to it. What about book club? You loved book club. I don't go anymore, she said quietly. It's too much trouble. Too much trouble. Marcia drives right past the library on her way to the grocery store. She could drop you off. I said I don't want to go. The sudden sharpness in her voice shocked both of us. Then, more quietly, I'm sorry. I'm not myself lately. I need some rest. I left her room feeling more confused than ever. This wasn't depression. This was something else. Something worse. Over the next few days, I started noticing smaller things that accumulated like splinters under skin. The way Mom would jump whenever Marcia entered a room unexpectedly, her whole body tensing like she'd been electrocuted. The way she'd measure every word she said when Marcia was around, weighing each syllable like it might detonate. The way she'd disappear into her room the moment Marcia came home. One evening, I came home early from work. A meeting had been canceled, and heard voices from the living room. I paused in the hallway, listening. Can't even make a simple cup of tea without spilling it everywhere, Marcia was saying, her voice dripping with exasperation. I had to clean up the entire counter, again. I'm sorry, Mom's voice, small and defeated. I'll be more careful. That's what you said yesterday, and the day before. Honestly, Christina, I'm starting to wonder if you're doing it on purpose for attention. I walked into the room. Both women looked up, and I watched in real time as Marcia's expression transformed from irritation to pleasant surprise. Peter, you're home early, she said brightly. Your mom was just telling me about a book she's reading. Weren't you, Christina? Mom nodded silently, her eyes fixed on the floor. Actually, I said carefully, I heard what you were saying about the tea. Marcia's smile didn't waver. Oh, that. I was just explaining to your mom that I'm happy to make her tea for her if her hands are too shaky. I don't want her to burn herself. It sounded more like you were scolding her. Peter, Marcia said, her voice taking on a wounded quality. I'm trying to help. Your mother spilled boiling water all over the counter. I was worried about her safety. I did spill it, Mom said quickly, not looking at either of us. It was my fault. Marcia's right. My hands have been shaky lately. But she was gripping her hands together in her lap, and they weren't shaking at all. The final straw came late one night. I got up to use the bathroom and noticed light coming from under Mom's door. I knocked softly. Mom, are you okay? No answer. I tried the door handle, locked. Mom? I knocked louder. Still no response. My heart was racing now. I pounded on the door. Mom, answer me! Finally, I heard movement. A click. The door opened, and Mom stood there looking exhausted and frightened. I'm fine, she said. I was just using the bathroom. The door was locked from the outside. What? No, She looked at the lock, confusion crossing her face. Then something else. Recognition. Fear. Why is your door locked from the outside? I asked. It's for her own safety, Marcia's voice came from behind me. She was standing in our bedroom doorway, wrapped in a robe. She's been getting confused at night, walking around the house in the dark. I was worried she'd fall down the stairs. You locked my mother in her room? My voice came out louder than I intended. For her own protection, Marcia said calmly. You're at work all day, Peter. You don't see how confused she gets. Last week I found her in the kitchen at 3 a.m. with the stove on. She didn't even remember turning it on. That's not true, Mom said, but her voice was so quiet I barely heard it. Christina, you know it is, Marcia said gently. I'm not trying to embarrass you. I'm just trying to keep you safe. I looked at Mom, waiting for her to deny it more firmly, but she just stood there, head bowed, like someone who'd learned there was no point in fighting. I'm the one taking care of her all day while you're at work, Marcia continued, and now there was real heat in her voice. I'm the one who cleans up her messes and helps her shower and makes sure she eats. I'm the one who deals with the doctor appointments and the medications and the constant neediness. And all I get from you is suspicion and accusations. She was crying now, her voice breaking on every other word. I love your mother, Peter. I'm trying to help her. But if you don't trust me, if you're going to question every decision I make, then maybe you should take a leave of absence from work and take care of her yourself. The words hung in the air like a gauntlet thrown down. And I realized with perfect crystal clarity what was happening. My wife was playing the martyr perfectly, the devoted daughter-in-law, exhausted and unappreciated, sacrificing everything for her difficult mother-in-law. To anyone listening, she sounded reasonable, sympathetic, even noble, and I almost believed her. Almost. Because I could see Mom standing there, head bowed, shoulders trembling, and I could see the lock on the outside of her door, and I could remember those finger-shaped bruises, and the altered medications, and the friends who couldn't reach her, and the fear, that terrible, primal fear in her eyes. Something was very, very wrong in my house, and my wife was at the center of it. I started sleeping lighter after the locked door incident. Not consciously at first. It was more like my subconscious had decided to post a sentry, keeping watch even while the rest of me tried to rest. So when Marcia slipped out of bed that first night, I woke instantly. The red numbers on my bedside clock read 2:17 a.m. I lay perfectly still, listening to her footsteps pad softly across our bedroom floor. The door opened with the faintest creak, and then she was gone, leaving only silence and the space where her warmth had been beside me. My first thought was bathroom, But our ensuite was right there, 5 feet from the bed. My second thought was kitchen. Maybe she couldn't sleep and wanted tea. But something told me to wait, to listen, to not make assumptions. I counted to 30, then slipped out of bed myself. The hallway was dark except for a sliver of light coming from beneath Mom's door. I moved toward it as quietly as I could, my heart hammering so hard I was sure it would give me away. As I got closer, I heard voices, low but distinct. Told you not to call anyone. Marcia's voice, hard and cold, in a way I'd never heard it before. What part of that is so difficult for you to understand? I just wanted to talk to Margaret. Mom's voice, small and pleading. She's my friend. I haven't spoken to her in... You'll speak to who I tell you to speak to. Do you understand me? Please, Marcia, please, Do you understand me? A pause. Then, so quietly, I almost missed it. Yes. My hand was on the doorknob. I was about to turn it to burst in and demand to know what the hell was going on when the door suddenly opened. Marcia stood there, her face inches from mine, her eyes wide with surprise that quickly morphed into something else, something calculated. Peter, she said, her voice shifting back to that gentle tone she always used with me. You scared me. What are you doing up? I heard voices, I said, trying to look past her into the room. I could see Mom sitting on the edge of her bed, her face turned away from us. What's going on? Your mom had another nightmare, Marcia said, pulling the door closed behind her and guiding me back toward our bedroom with a hand on my arm. A bad one this time. She was calling out for your father. It was heartbreaking. I want to talk to her. She's exhausted, honey. I just got her calmed down. Let's let her rest. Marcia's grip on my arm tightened slightly. Come back to bed. You have that big presentation tomorrow. You need your sleep. I let her lead me back to our room, but sleep was impossible. I lay there in the dark, replaying what I'd heard, that coldness in Marcia's voice, that pleading in Mom's. None of it matched the nightmare story. The next morning, Mom looked like she'd been through a war. The circles under her eyes were so dark they looked like bruises. Her hands trembled as she tried to pour coffee, and she gave up halfway through, leaving the pot on the counter. Mom, I said gently, did you sleep okay? She glanced at Marcia, who was making toast with her back to us. Fine, she said. Just some bad dreams. Marcia said you called out for Dad. Something flickered across Mom's face. Confusion, maybe. Did I? I don't remember. That's normal with nightmares, Marcia said, turning around with a bright smile. Sometimes we don't remember them at all. Christina, you should eat something. You barely touched dinner last night. I'm not hungry, Mom said quietly. You need to eat. You're getting too thin. Marcia set a plate of toast in front of her. At least try. Mom picked up a piece of toast with shaking hands and took the smallest bite possible. She chewed mechanically, not looking at either of us, like eating was a punishment she had to endure. I left for work feeling sick to my stomach. That night I made a decision. Instead of falling asleep, I would wait. I would see if it happened again. I lay in bed pretending to sleep, breathing slowly and deeply, keeping my body relaxed, even as my mind raced. At 1:47 a.m., Marcia got out of bed. I waited until I heard our bedroom door close. Then I crept out after her. This time I was more careful, staying further back, making sure I was hidden in shadows. I watched as she stopped outside Mom's door, listened for a moment, then quietly opened it and slipped inside. I moved closer, pressing myself against the wall next to the door. It wasn't closed all the way. She'd left it open just a crack. Through it, I could hear everything. "Wake up!" Marcia's voice, sharp as a slap. "What?" Mom, confused and frightened. "What's wrong?" "Get up. You need to do your exercises." "Exercises? It's the middle of the night. I don't—" "Did I ask you what time it was? Get up." I heard movement, the creak of bed springs, Mom's labored breathing. "Please, Marcia, I'm so tired. Can't I just—" "Touch your toes, 20 times. Start counting." "I can't. My back—" "Count." The sound of crying, soft, defeated. Then, barely audible. 1, 2. I was shaking now, rage and horror mixing into something that made me want to kick down that door. But some instinct told me to wait, to bear witness, to know the full extent of what was happening before I acted. After what felt like an eternity, Marcia's voice again. "Pathetic. You can't even do 20. No wonder Peter is ashamed of you." "Peter's not." "Yes, he is. Why do you think he works such long hours? He can't stand being around you. You're a burden, a weight around both our necks. He only keeps you here out of guilt." "That's not true," Mom whispered, but there was no conviction in it. "Isn't it? When's the last time he spent real time with you? When's the last time he chose you over his work, over me, over anything? You're nothing to him now. Nothing but an obligation." I heard more crying. Then Marcia's voice, softer now but somehow more menacing. "Go back to sleep. And remember, if you tell Peter about our late-night talks, I'll make sure he knows how much trouble you really are. I'll make sure you end up in a home. A real home. The kind with locked doors and strangers who don't care if you live or die." "Please don't," Mom sobbed. "Please, I'll be good. I won't say anything." That's what I thought. I barely made it back to our bedroom before Marcia emerged. I dove under the covers, forced my breathing to even out, and lay there as she climbed back into bed beside me. She sighed contentedly, like she'd just finished some pleasant task, and within minutes her breathing had deepened into sleep. I didn't sleep at all that night. The pattern continued. Night after night, I would wait until Marcia left our bed. Then I would listen at Mom's door to the psychological torture happening inside. Sometimes it was exercises in the middle of the night. Sometimes it was cruel interrogations about whether Mom had spoken to anyone, done anything wrong, broken any of Marcia's rules. Rules I never knew existed. Sometimes it was just verbal abuse. Marcia tearing down my mother piece by piece with words designed to destroy. One night, "You're worthless. No wonder your husband died. He was probably relieved to get away from you." Another night, "If you keep this up, I'll have to tell Peter about your dementia, about how confused you get, about how you can't be trusted. They'll put you away." And another, "You think anyone would believe you over me? I'm his wife. You're just the burden he's stuck with. If you try to tell him anything, I'll make sure he never speaks to you again." The sessions lasted longer each time. 30 minutes, 45 minutes, sometimes a full hour of torture, always between 1 and 3 a.m., when sleep deprivation would be most effective. I understood now why Mom looked so exhausted, so broken. She wasn't sleeping. She was lying awake in terror, waiting for Marcia to come through that door. During the days, I watched Mom deteriorate further. She stopped leaving her room except when absolutely necessary. She picked at her food like a bird. She flinched at every sound. Her hands shook constantly now. She looked like she'd aged a decade in a matter of weeks. and Marcia played the concerned caregiver perfectly. She'd make sympathetic noises about Mom's decline. She'd suggest doctor's appointments and specialists. She'd sigh and say things like, "I'm doing my best, but she's just not herself anymore." While I watched, knowing the truth, knowing that every bit of Mom's deterioration was deliberate, planned, executed with precision while I slept in the next room. I felt like I was losing my mind. How could I confront this? What would I say? "I've been eavesdropping on you in the middle of the night." Marcia would just deny it. She'd call me paranoid. She'd probably even get Mom to back her up out of fear. I needed proof. Real, undeniable, concrete proof that would make it impossible for Marcia to lie her way out of what she was doing. After a week of listening to the nightly torture sessions, I made a decision. I was at my computer at work, supposedly reviewing quarterly reports, but really I was searching online for hidden cameras. Small ones. The kind you could hide in a bedroom without anyone knowing. My hands were shaking as I filled out the order form. 2-day shipping. It would arrive while I was at work, and I could install it before Marcia knew it existed. I knew what I had to do, and I hated myself for not doing it sooner. How long had this been happening? How many nights had I slept peacefully while my mother was being terrorized 20 feet away? How many times had Marcia left our bed, tortured my mother, and come back to sleep beside me like nothing had happened? The guilt was crushing, but it was also clarifying. I was done wondering. I was done questioning myself. I was done letting Marcia gaslight me into doubting my own instincts. I was going to get proof, and then I was going to destroy her. The package arrived on a Wednesday afternoon. I'd been tracking it obsessively, refreshing the delivery page every hour, terrified that Marcia would somehow intercept it. But luck was on my side. I got the notification while I was in a meeting, and I left early, claiming a sudden headache that wasn't entirely a lie. My head had been pounding for days. The camera was smaller than I'd expected. Tiny, really. Disguised as a smoke detector, it would blend perfectly with the one already in Mom's room. I sat in my car in the driveway, holding the box, and felt the weight of what I was about to do settle over me like a shroud. If I was wrong about this, if I installed a hidden camera to spy on my wife and discovered nothing, our marriage was probably over. Trust, once broken, doesn't heal easily. Marcia would have every right to be furious, violated, betrayed. But if I was right, I couldn't finish that thought. Not yet. I waited until Saturday morning. Marcia had mentioned taking Mom to the grocery store and the pharmacy, errands that would take at least 2 hours. I claimed I needed to catch up on work emails and waved them off with what I hoped was a convincing smile. The moment their car pulled out of the driveway, I was moving. My hands were shaking so badly I could barely get the packaging open. The instructions were simple enough, but every step felt monumental. Mount the camera, connect it to the Wi-Fi, download the app, test the feed. I stood in Mom's room, looking at the small device now affixed to the ceiling, and felt like I'd crossed some invisible line into a darker version of myself. This was it. No going back now. The camera had night vision, motion activation. It would record everything and save it to the cloud. All I had to do was wait. Those 3 days were the longest of my life. I couldn't eat, couldn't focus at work, couldn't look Marcia in the eye without wondering what she was thinking, what she was planning for that night. Every evening, I'd open the app on my phone, scrolling through hours of footage of Mom's empty room during the day, her sleeping form at night, and nothing else. Maybe I really was paranoid. Maybe the late-night visits had stopped. Maybe Marcia had somehow sensed what I was doing and had backed off. The hope felt pathetic even as I clung to it. On the third night, I couldn't take it anymore. After Marcia fell asleep, I grabbed my phone and went to my home office, closing the door quietly behind me. I opened the app, selected the footage from earlier that night, and pressed play. For the first hour, nothing. Mom sleeping fitfully, tossing and turning. Then, at 2:03 a.m., the bedroom door opened. Marcia entered the frame. Even in the dark, even through the grainy night vision camera, I could see the expression on her face. It wasn't the Marcia I knew. This person moved with purpose, with barely contained rage, like a predator that had been waiting all day to hunt. She walked to the wall and flipped on the overhead light, the harsh, bright fluorescent that Mom always said hurt her eyes. On the screen, I watched my mother jerk awake, shielding her face with her hands. "Get up," Marcia said. Her voice was flat, cold. "What? What's wrong?" Mom's voice thick with sleep and confusion. "I said get up, now." I watched Mom struggle to sit up, her movements slow and pained. She was wearing her nightgown, and in the bright light I could see how thin she'd become, how her collarbones jutted out like sharp edges. "Marcia, please. It's the middle of the night. I was sleeping." "You think you're so special, don't you?" Marcia moved closer to the bed, and I could see Mom shrinking back. "You think because you're Peter's mother, you're important, that you matter." "I don't. I never said—" "Peter's my husband now, not yours. Mine. He doesn't need you anymore. Do you understand that? He doesn't need you." "I know," Mom whispered. "I know that. I'm not trying to. Then why are you still here?" Marcia leaned in close, her face inches from Mom's. "Why haven't you had the decency to just disappear? To stop being such a burden on everyone?" I could see tears streaming down Mom's face in the camera's cold light. She was shaking. "Stand up," Marcia commanded. "Exercise time." "Please, not tonight. I'm so tired. I can barely—" "Did I ask if you were tired? Stand up." Mom got to her feet, unsteady, holding onto the bedpost for support. She looked like she might collapse at any moment. "Jumping jacks, 20 of them, go." "I can't. My heart—" "Your heart is fine. You're just lazy and worthless. Now move." I watched my mother try to do jumping jacks in the middle of the night. She made it through 5 before she started crying. 8 before she had to stop and catch her breath. Marcia stood there, arms crossed, watching with an expression that can only be described as satisfaction. "Pathetic," she said, when Mom finally gave up after 12. "Absolutely pathetic. This is why Peter can't stand to be around you." "That's not true," Mom sobbed. "Isn't it? Where is he right now? Sleeping peacefully in our bed, not worried about you, not checking on you, because he trusts me to handle you. You're my problem now, not his." Marcia walked over to the nightstand where Mom kept a glass of water. She picked it up and walked out of the room with it. Mom watched her go, her shoulders shaking with silent sobs. When Marcia returned a few minutes later, she was holding something. "Oh, where did your glasses go? I can't seem to find them anywhere." "You must have misplaced them again." I realized with horror that she was hiding Mom's glasses. Mom was nearly blind without them. Couldn't read, couldn't watch TV, couldn't do anything but sit in her room, isolated and helpless. "I need those," Mom said weakly. "Please, I can't see without them." "Then I guess you'll just have to sit in the dark, won't you?" Marcia smiled. It was the most terrifying thing I'd ever seen. Maybe it'll teach you to be more grateful for what you have. I am grateful. I am. Please, just... By the way, Marcia said, moving toward the door. Peter and I were talking today. He's been looking at some really nice nursing homes. The kind where they keep people who can't take care of themselves anymore. He thinks it might be time. No, Mom said, her voice breaking. No, please, he wouldn't. Wouldn't he? You've been nothing but trouble since you moved in. Constantly needing attention, making messes, being difficult. He's tired of you, Christina. We both are. So you'd better start being very, very good. Or we'll make the call. I'll be good, Mom whispered. I promise. I'll be better. That's what I thought. Marcia turned off the light, plunging the room back into darkness. Try to get some sleep. You look terrible. The door closed, and I watched my mother collapse onto her bed, crying so hard her whole body shook, but making no sound. She'd learned to cry silently. She'd learned that making noise would only bring Marcia back, but it wasn't over. An hour later, Marcia returned, just opened the door, turned on the light, woke Mom up again. Just checking on you, she said sweetly. Can't sleep? You just woke me up, Mom said, confused and exhausted. Did I? You must have been dreaming. Go back to sleep. She did it again at 4 a.m. and again at 5 a.m. Deliberate sleep deprivation, systematic torture. By 6 a.m., when the camera footage showed dawn starting to lighten the sky, Mom hadn't slept more than 20 minutes at a stretch. She lay in bed with her eyes open, too exhausted to even cry anymore, just staring at the ceiling and waiting for the next interruption. I made it through 2 more nights of footage. Each one was the same. Different cruelties, different lies, but the same systematic destruction of my mother's will to live. Forced exercises, withheld food and water, stolen glasses, threats about nursing homes, verbal assaults about being worthless, unwanted, a burden, and always, always the sleep deprivation, waking her up every hour or two, never letting her rest, breaking her down night after night after night. On one recording, Marcia stood over Mom's bed and said, "If you tell Peter anything, I'll make sure you regret it. I'll tell him you're delusional, that you're losing your mind, and he'll believe me. You know he will. Because who's he going to trust? His wife? Or a senile old woman who can't even remember to take her medication?" The worst part, the absolute worst part, was watching my mother lie there and take it, not fighting back, not calling for me, just enduring it in silence because Marcia had successfully convinced her that no one would believe her, that I would choose my wife over my mother, that resistance would only make things worse. I made it through the 3rd night's footage before I had to stop. I barely made it to the trash can before I vomited. Then I was crying. Then I was rage screaming into my hands to keep from waking Marcia in the next room. Then I was just sitting on the floor of my office, shaking. I watched the woman I married torture the woman who gave me life. I watched my wife systematically destroy my mother with a precision that spoke of planning, of deliberation, of enjoying every moment of her victim's suffering. And I understood, finally, completely, devastatingly understood, that my mother had been trying to tell me. She'd been begging me with her eyes, her silence, her fear, that whispered plea. Please don't leave me alone with her. The flinching, the weight loss, the terror. She'd been screaming for help in every way she knew how, and I'd been too blind to see it. I called in sick to work on Thursday morning. My voice must have sounded convincing because my boss didn't question it, just told me to rest up and feel better. I wasn't going to feel better. Not for a long time, maybe never. I waited until I heard Marcia in the shower. Then I went to Mom's room and knocked softly. "Mom, can I come in?" She was sitting on her bed, and when she looked up at me, I had to fight to keep my expression neutral. Without her glasses, her eyes were squinted and lost. She looked so small, so fragile, so utterly defeated. "Peter," she said, her voice barely audible. "Is everything okay?" "I need you to stay in your room today," I said quietly. "Lock the door from the inside. Don't open it for anyone but me. Okay?" "Why? What's—" "Please, Mom, just trust me. Lock the door. I'll come get you in a little while." She nodded, confusion and fear crossing her face, but she didn't argue. I waited until I heard the lock click before I went back to set up. I'd already transferred the most damning footage to my laptop. Hours of it. 3 nights' worth of systematic torture. I set the laptop on the coffee table in the living room, queued up the first video, and waited. My hands were steady. That surprised me. I'd expected to be shaking, to be nervous, but instead I felt something cold and focused settle over me. This wasn't nervousness. This was rage that had crystallized into diamond-hard purpose. Marcia came downstairs in her bathrobe, hair damp from the shower, looking radiant and relaxed. She smiled when she saw me on the couch. "I thought you had work today," she said, moving to kiss my cheek. I didn't move away, but I didn't lean into it either. "Called in sick. I need to show you something." "Are you okay? You look pale." "Sit down, Marcia." Something in my tone made her pause. "Peter, what's wrong?" "Sit down." She sat slowly, her eyes moving between me and the laptop. "You're scaring me. What's going on?" I turned the laptop toward her and pressed play. The footage started at 2:03 a.m. Marcia entering Mom's room. The harsh light turning on. "Get up." I watched Marcia's face as she watched herself. It was fascinating in a horrible way, like watching someone realize they've been caught in a trap. First came shock, her eyes widening, her mouth opening slightly. Then panic, her breathing quickening, her hands clenching. Then something else, something calculating. The video played on. Marcia's voice, cold and cruel. "You think you're so special?" The forced exercises, Mom crying, the glasses being hidden. All of it. "Turn it off," Marcia said. I didn't. "Peter, turn it off, please." "Why? You certainly didn't turn off the lights when you were torturing my mother." "That's not... You don't understand what you're seeing. It's not what it looks like." I stopped the video and looked at her. Really looked at her. This woman I'd married. This woman I'd shared a bed with. This woman I'd trusted with the person I loved most in the world. "Then explain it to me," I said quietly. "Explain what I'm seeing." "She's manipulating you." Marcia's voice rose, desperation creeping in. "Your mother. She's been playing games, acting helpless, acting scared, trying to turn you against me. This footage, it's out of context. She provokes me, Peter. She says things, does things, and then, when I try to help her, when I try to correct her behavior, she acts like I'm the villain." "Help her? You're forcing a 68-year-old woman to do jumping jacks at 2 in the morning. She needs exercise. Her doctor never said that. I checked. I called Dr. Harrison this morning." Marcia's face went white. "You called her doctor?" "I also checked her medication." "You've been doubling her blood pressure medication. Did you know that? That much medication could have killed her." "That's not true. I would never." I have her pill bottles. I have her prescription records. I have 3 nights of video footage of you systematically torturing my mother." My voice was still calm, still controlled, but inside I was screaming. "So stop lying. Just stop." And then something happened that I'll never forget. Marcia's face changed. The panic disappeared. The desperation vanished. What replaced it was pure, undiluted rage. "Fine," she spat. "You want the truth? Here's the truth. Yes, I went into her room at night. Yes, I made her do exercises. Yes, I took her glasses and her water and anything else that made her comfortable. You know why? Enlighten me. Because she doesn't belong here." Marcia was on her feet now, pacing, her voice rising with each word. "This was supposed to be our house, Peter. Ours. We were supposed to start a family, have kids, build a life together. Just us. And then she came. And suddenly everything was about Mom. Mom needs this. Mom needs that. Mom's having a hard time. Mom's grieving. What about me? What about what I need? So you tortured her. I tried to make her leave. I tried to make her uncomfortable enough that she'd ask to go somewhere else. But she's so pathetic, so clingy. She just kept enduring it, kept taking it. Do you know how frustrating that is? To try everything and have it not work? I stood up slowly. You're talking about my mother like she's a pest you're trying to get rid of. That's exactly what she is, Marcia screamed. She's a parasite, Peter. She latched onto you when your father died, played the grieving widow card, manipulated you into bringing her here, and then she just stayed, taking up space, taking up your time, taking up your attention. It was supposed to be about us, but it's always about her. You're jealous, I said, and the realization was both shocking and somehow obvious. You're jealous of my relationship with my mother. Jealous? Marcia laughed, but it was an ugly sound. I'm furious. You're always mom this, mom that. When do I get to be your priority? When do I matter more than her? She's my mother. And I'm your wife. That's supposed to mean something, Peter. Your wife is supposed to come first. Not your elderly mother who should be in a home anyway. She's not elderly, she's 68, and she's not going to any home. She's staying right here where she belongs. Over my dead body. No, I said, and my voice came out like ice. Over our dead marriage. Get out. Marcia blinked. What? Get out of my house. Pack a bag. Leave, now. You can't be serious. I watched you torture my mother for 3 nights straight. I watched you deprive her of sleep, force her to exercise when she could barely stand, hide her glasses so she couldn't read, withhold water, threaten her with nursing homes, tell her I was ashamed of her. I watched you destroy her piece by piece. And you think I'm not serious about wanting you out of my house? Peter, wait. And just like that, the rage disappeared and the tears started. Wait, please, I'm sorry. I'm so sorry, I was wrong. I was stressed and overwhelmed and I made terrible decisions. But we can fix this. We can go to therapy. I can apologize to your mother. We can work through this. No. Please, please, I love you. I love you so much. I lost control. I wasn't thinking clearly. But I can change. I can be better. Please don't throw away our marriage over this. You tortured my mother. I'll apologize. I'll make it right. Just give me a chance. You tortured my mother, I repeated louder. You systematically abused a vulnerable elderly woman who was grieving her dead husband. You gaslit me for months. You isolated her from her friends. You tampered with her medications. You locked her in her room. You made her life a living hell while sleeping next to me every night, like nothing was wrong. I wasn't thinking, You were thinking plenty. This was planned, calculated. You knew exactly what you were doing. Marcia's tears stopped as suddenly as they'd started. So that's it? You're choosing her over me? She's a 68-year-old woman who lost her husband and you tortured her. I roared, finally losing control. What kind of monster does that? What kind of person systematically destroys someone who's already broken? The kind who's trying to save her marriage. Marcia shot back. The kind who's fighting for her husband's attention. You brought her into our home without asking if I was ready. You expected me to become her caregiver. You just assumed I'd be happy to give up my life to tend to your grieving mother. Did you ever once ask me how I felt about it? Did you ever once tell me you were unhappy? Would you have listened? Or would you have just called me selfish and cruel like you're doing now? You are selfish and cruel. You're a monster. I'm your wife. Not for much longer. I picked up my phone. Pack your things and get out. You have 1 hour. And if I don't, then I call the police and I show them the videos. That stopped her. You wouldn't. Watch me. We stared at each other across the living room. In that moment, I saw the real Marcia. Not the woman I'd married, not the woman who'd smiled at me over coffee and laughed at my jokes and held my hand during movies. I saw someone I didn't recognize. Someone capable of cruelty I couldn't fathom. Someone who had lived in my house, slept in my bed, and tortured my mother while I remained oblivious. I'd been married to a stranger, a monster. I'll need to get some boxes from the garage, she said finally, her voice flat. You have 1 hour. Then I'm calling the police anyway. She went upstairs without another word. I waited until I heard her in our bedroom before I went to Mom's room. Mom, it's me. You can open the door. The lock clicked. The door opened. Mom stood there looking terrified. What's happening? I heard yelling. Marcia's leaving, I said. And she's never coming back. Mom's legs seemed to give out. I caught her before she fell, helped her to the bed, held her while she cried. Not the silent crying I'd seen on the footage. Real crying. Loud, gasping, gut-wrenching sobs of relief and grief and trauma. I'm so sorry, I whispered into her hair. I'm so sorry I didn't see it. I'm sorry I didn't protect you. I'm sorry I let this happen. It's over? She asked between sobs. Really over? It's over, I promise. She can never hurt you again. An hour later, Marcia left with 2 suitcases and a face like stone. She didn't look at me. Didn't look at Mom's closed bedroom door. Just walked out and drove away. I called the police. Filed a report for elder abuse. Provided the video evidence, the medication records, everything. They said they'd be in touch, that this was clearly a serious case. Then I sat with Mom in her room and found her glasses where Marcia had hidden them, in a box in the garage. And I watched my mother's face light up when she could see clearly again, even as tears streamed down her cheeks. My mother had been living in hell while I slept peacefully next door. But that was over now. The first thing I did after Marcia left was change the locks. I called a locksmith that same day and watched as he installed new deadbolts on every door. Mom stood in the hallway while he worked, her arms wrapped around herself, flinching every time his drill made a loud noise. She can't come back now, I told her when he was done. She has no key. She has no way in. You're safe. Mom nodded, but I could see she didn't quite believe it yet. Safety, I was learning, wasn't just about locked doors. It was about feeling safe, about trusting that the nightmare was really over. That would take time. Over the next few days, I systematically removed every trace of Marcia from the house. Her clothes, her books, her decorative touches, her photos. I packed everything into boxes and had them shipped to her mother's address. I didn't want Mom to have to see anything that would remind her of what had happened. When I took down the wedding photo from the mantel, Mom was sitting on the couch watching me. "I'm sorry," she said quietly. "For what? For ruining your marriage?" I set the frame down and went to sit beside her. "Mom, you didn't ruin anything. Marcia did. She made her choices. She chose cruelty. She chose abuse. None of that is your fault. But if I hadn't moved in, then I would have married a woman who's capable of torture and never known it. Better to find out now than later. Better to protect you than to live in ignorance." Mom's eyes filled with tears. "I wanted to tell you. So many times. I wanted to tell you." "I know. Want to talk about it?" She was quiet for a long moment. Then, slowly, she started to speak. It all came out in a flood. Everything I'd seen on the videos and more. The things that happened during the day when I was at work. How Marcia would accidentally bump into her, making her spill things and then berating her for being clumsy. How she'd serve Mom's food cold or spoiled and then act concerned when Mom couldn't eat it. How she'd hide things, not just glasses, but Mom's phone, her hearing aid, her medications, and then find them later, making Mom feel like she was losing her mind. She'd tell me I was getting dementia, Mom said, her voice breaking. She'd say things like, "You asked me that already," or "We just talked about this, don't you remember?" Even when we hadn't. She made me doubt my own mind. "That's gaslighting," I said. "It's a form of psychological abuse." I started to wonder if maybe she was right. Maybe I was losing it. Maybe I was becoming a burden who couldn't even remember basic things. And that scared me more than anything else she did. "What else did she say to you?" Mom took a shaky breath. "She told me that if I said anything to you, you'd choose her. That I was delusional. That no one would believe an old woman over your wife. She said..." Mom's voice dropped to a whisper. "She said if I told you, you'd put me in a home. That I'd never see you again. That I'd die alone in some facility where nobody cared." The words hit me like physical blows. "Mom, I would never..." "I know. I know that now." But when she said it, when she looked me in the eyes and told me that over and over, I started to believe it. Because what if she was right? What if you did choose her? I couldn't risk it. I couldn't risk losing you completely. So I just endured it. I thought if I could just be good enough, quiet enough, invisible enough, maybe it would stop. "Why didn't you call someone? Your friends? Margaret?" She monitored my phone. She'd check my call logs, my messages. The few times I tried to reach out, she knew immediately. That's when the punishments got worse. Mom was crying freely now. I felt so stupid, so weak. I was a grown woman and I was being bullied by my own daughter-in-law. What kind of person lets that happen to them? A person who's being abused. "Mom, none of this was your fault. Marcia is a master manipulator. She knew exactly what to say, exactly what buttons to push to keep you silent. That doesn't make you weak. That makes her a predator. I should have fought harder. I should have found a way to tell you. You tried. You told me not to leave you alone with her. You showed me in every way you could without words. I'm the one who should have seen it sooner." We sat there together, both crying, both carrying guilt that neither of us deserved. Eventually, Mom leaned her head on my shoulder like she used to when I was a kid, and she'd comfort me after a nightmare. I was so scared, she whispered. Every night I'd lie there wondering if tonight would be the night she'd go too far, wondering if I'd just not wake up one morning. The medication she was giving me made me feel so strange. My heart would race. I'd feel dizzy. I thought maybe I was dying and nobody would know it wasn't natural. She could have killed you, I said, and the reality of it settled over us like a shroud. If this had gone on much longer, but it didn't. You saved me. I should have saved you sooner. You saved me, Mom repeated, squeezing my hand. That's what matters. Over the next few days, I started researching therapists who specialized in trauma and elder abuse. I called 5 different offices before I found Dr. Sarah Chen, a psychologist who'd worked extensively with abuse survivors. I need to warn you, she said during our initial phone call. Recovery from this kind of systematic abuse takes time. Your mother has been through psychological torture. She's been gaslit, manipulated, and terrorized. She may have nightmares. She may have trust issues. She may struggle with anxiety and depression. This isn't something that gets fixed in a few sessions. I understand. I just want her to feel safe again. I want her to be able to sleep without fear. We can work toward that. The fact that she has your support is huge. Many victims of elder abuse don't have anyone advocating for them. Mom was nervous about her first therapy appointment. She changed her outfit 3 times, worried about what to say, afraid Dr. Chen wouldn't believe her, or would think she was being dramatic. Just tell her the truth, I said. That's all you have to do. I waited in the lobby during that first session, checking my phone every 2 minutes, wondering if this was the right move. When Mom finally emerged an hour later, her eyes were red from crying, but something in her face looked lighter. She believes me, Mom said in the car. She said what happened to me was real trauma. She said I'm not weak or stupid. She said I survived. You did survive. You're here. You're safe. And you're going to heal. The healing came in small increments. The first night Mom slept through without waking up screaming was a victory. The morning she came down to breakfast and actually ate a full meal was another. The afternoon I heard her laughing at a TV show. Really laughing, not the hollow sound she'd made before. I had to leave the room because I was crying too hard. It was like watching someone come back from the dead. Piece by piece, day by day, my real mother was returning. I called Margaret and explained everything. Well, the abbreviated version anyway. I told her Mom had been dealing with a difficult situation and was ready to reconnect now. Margaret arrived the next day with flowers and a casserole and fierce loyalty. I knew something was wrong, Margaret said, hugging Mom tight. I felt it in my bones. I'm so glad you're okay now. Soon, other friends started coming by. Susan from church, Linda from the old book club. They rallied around Mom with the kind of unconditional support that made me realize how much Marcia had isolated her. These women had tried to reach out, tried to maintain contact, and Marcia had systematically cut them all off. But they came back the moment they could. They brought food and company and normalcy. They made Mom laugh with stories and gossip. They treated her like the whole, complete person she was, not the broken victim Marcia had tried to create. One afternoon, about 3 weeks after Marcia left, I came home from work to find Mom in the kitchen actually cooking. Not heating up something I'd made. Actually cooking from scratch, flour on her hands, humming along to the radio. Mom? She turned, and the smile on her face was genuine, I'm making your father's favorite cookies, chocolate chip. I woke up this morning and realized I hadn't baked in almost a year. I wanted to. I watched her measure out sugar and butter, moving with a confidence I hadn't seen in months. She was wearing her glasses. Her hair was brushed. She was humming. Want to help? She asked. You used to love licking the spoon when you were little. I rolled up my sleeves and joined her. We baked cookies together while evening light streamed through the windows, and for the first time since this nightmare began, the house felt like a home again. That night, as we sat eating warm cookies with milk, Mom said something that made me stop mid-bite. I'm glad it happened. What? Not the abuse part. That was hell. But I'm glad the truth came out. I'm glad you know now. I'm glad I don't have to pretend anymore or hide or walk on eggshells. I'm glad that woman is gone and it's just us again. Just you and me. Like it should be. Mom, you're not... I know. I'm not a burden. You've told me 100 times, and I'm starting to believe it. She reached across the table and took my hand. You gave me my life back, Peter. You gave me hope again. You gave me purpose, I said. Protecting you, making sure you heal. That's the most important thing I'll ever do. Watching my mother come back to life was like watching spring after the longest winter. Every smile was precious. Every laugh was a gift. Every moment of peace was something I'd never take for granted again. She was sleeping through the night now. She was eating 3 meals a day. She was reconnecting with friends and rediscovering hobbies and starting to believe in her own worth again. The trauma wasn't gone. She still flinched at loud noises sometimes. She still checked door locks compulsively. She still had nightmares, though they were getting less frequent. But she was healing. Slowly, surely, beautifully healing. And I was there for every step of it, making sure she knew she was safe, she was loved, and she would never, ever be alone again. Detective Rachel Morrison from the Special Victims Unit called me 3 days after I filed the police report. Her voice on the phone was professional but warm, the kind of voice that made you trust her immediately. Mr. Scow, I've reviewed your case file and the video evidence you provided. I'd like to meet with you and your mother to discuss next steps. This is clearly a serious case of elder abuse, and we want to pursue it fully. We met at the station the following day. Detective Morrison was in her 40s, with kind eyes and a no-nonsense demeanor. She sat across from us in a small conference room, a thick folder in front of her. First, I want you to know that I believe you, she said, looking directly at Mom. What happened to you was real. It was criminal, and it was not your fault. Mom's eyes filled with tears. Thank you. I've watched all the footage you provided, Mr. Scow, and I have to tell you, in 15 years of working elder abuse cases, this is one of the clearest, most well-documented cases I've ever seen. Your wife, she corrected herself. Your soon-to-be ex-wife didn't just lose her temper or make poor decisions in a moment of stress. This was systematic. Calculated torture. What happens now? I asked. We're filing charges. Multiple counts of elder abuse, assault, unlawful imprisonment. She locked your mother in her room and potentially attempted poisoning given the medication tampering. The district attorney will be handling this case personally because of how egregious it is. Mom's hand found mine under the table. Will I have to testify? Eventually, yes, but not right away. We have the videos. We have medical records showing your declining health during the period of abuse and your improvement since. We have testimony from your friends about being unable to reach you. We have the hidden medication. The case is strong even before we get to your testimony. When the time comes, we'll prepare you thoroughly. And I'll be there with you every step of the way." 2 weeks later, Marcia was formally charged. The arrest happened at her mother's house where she'd been staying. Her mother called me, screaming obscenities, accusing me of destroying her daughter's life over a family disagreement. I hung up on her. Marcia's lawyer reached out shortly after, trying to negotiate. Maybe we could settle this quietly, drop the charges in exchange for Marcia seeking counseling and staying away. I told him to go to hell. There would be no deals, no quiet resolutions. What Marcia had done needed to be on public record. The divorce proceedings started around the same time. My lawyer, Janet Rodriguez, was a shark in a power suit who'd handled high-conflict divorces for 20 years. "This should be straightforward," she said at our first meeting. "You have documented abuse of a family member. You have a protective order. The house is in your name. You'll get everything, and she'll be lucky if she's not ordered to pay you damages. I don't want her money. I just want her gone, permanently. Then that's what we'll make sure happens." The legal process moved slowly. Weeks turned into months. There were hearings and depositions and mountains of paperwork. Through it all, Mom continued her therapy with Dr. Chen, and I watched her grow stronger even as she was forced to relive the trauma through legal proceedings. Marcia's family tried everything to defend her. Her mother claimed Mom must have provoked her. Her sister insisted Marcia had been under tremendous stress and deserved compassion. They hired an expensive lawyer who tried to paint Marcia as an overwhelmed caregiver who'd made mistakes but didn't deserve criminal charges. Then, the prosecution played the videos in court. I wasn't there for that preliminary hearing. Mom and I decided we didn't need to witness Marcia's family's reactions, but Janet told me about it afterward. "They went silent," she said. "All of them." Marcia's mother, who'd been crying and making excuses, just stopped talking. The lawyer looked like he wanted to quit on the spot, because there's no defense for what those videos show. There's no explanation that makes it okay. It's just pure, calculated cruelty caught on camera. The prosecutor, District Attorney Marcus Webb, was passionate about the case. He called me personally to discuss it. "Mr. Scow, I want you to know that I'm treating this with the seriousness it deserves. Elder abuse is one of the most underreported crimes in this country. Many victims never speak up because they're afraid or ashamed, or they don't think anyone will believe them. Your mother was fortunate that you installed that camera. Many victims aren't so lucky. I should have done it sooner. You did it when you knew something was wrong. That's what matters. And because you did, we have the clearest case I've seen in my career. This is the kind of evidence that prevents plea bargains and ensures real consequences." He was right. When the trial date approached, Marcia's lawyer tried repeatedly to get her to accept a plea deal. The evidence was too strong to fight. But Marcia refused, insisting she'd done nothing wrong, that the videos were taken out of context, that Mom had manipulated everything. The trial lasted 3 days. Mom had to testify, and I sat in the courtroom holding her hand up until the moment she took the stand. Dr. Chen had prepared her well. Mom spoke clearly, calmly, describing what had happened to her in clinical detail that was somehow more devastating than if she'd been emotional. "She made me do exercises in the middle of the night," Mom said on the stand. "She told me I was worthless. She told me my son was ashamed of me. She withheld food and water. She hid my glasses so I couldn't read or watch television. She tampered with my medications. She threatened to have me committed to a nursing home if I told anyone. She woke me up every hour so I couldn't sleep. She made me afraid to exist in my own home." When they played the videos for the jury, several jurors were visibly upset. One woman was crying. A man looked like he wanted to throw something. And Marcia sat at the defense table with her lawyer, expressionless, like she was watching someone else's trial. I testified too, about noticing the changes in Mom, about the locked door, about installing the camera, about what I'd witnessed through those recordings, about the confrontation. "Why did you install a hidden camera in your mother's room?" the prosecutor asked. "Because I knew something was terribly wrong, but I needed proof. My wife was gaslighting me, making me doubt my own instincts. I needed to see the truth with my own eyes. And what I saw..." I had to pause, composing myself. What I saw was the woman I married systematically torturing the woman who gave me life. The defense tried to argue that Marcia had been overwhelmed, stressed, that caring for an elderly person was difficult. But the videos made it impossible. There was no stress relief in what Marcia had done. There was only cruelty. The jury deliberated for 2 hours. When they came back with the verdict, I was holding Mom's hand so tightly, I was probably hurting her, but she didn't complain. On the count of elder abuse in the first degree, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of assault, we find the defendant guilty. On the count of unlawful imprisonment, we find the defendant guilty, 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 guilty. 7 counts in total, all guilty. Marcia's mother wailed. Marcia herself finally showed emotion, shock, disbelief, like she genuinely thought she'd be acquitted. Her lawyer put a hand on her shoulder as the bailiff approached. The sentencing hearing was 2 weeks later. D.A. Webb argued for the maximum penalties, citing the deliberate nature of the abuse, the vulnerability of the victim, and the complete lack of remorse shown by the defendant. Marcia's lawyer argued for leniency, saying his client had no prior criminal record and was herself a victim of circumstance. The judge was not impressed. "Mrs. Scow," Judge Patricia Hayes said, looking directly at Marcia, "I have reviewed the evidence in this case extensively. I have watched the videos. I have heard testimony from your victim, from her son, from medical professionals. What you did to Mrs. Christina Scow was nothing short of torture. You took a grieving, vulnerable woman and systematically broke her down through psychological and physical abuse. You isolated her from her support system. You manipulated her medications. You deprived her of sleep, food, water, and basic dignity. And you did all of this while presenting yourself as a caring daughter-in-law to the outside world." Marcia was standing now, her lawyer beside her, and I could see her hands shaking. "This court finds that your actions were not the result of stress or poor judgment, but of calculated cruelty. You are hereby sentenced to 18 months in county jail, suspended in favor of 3 years of intensive probation, 500 hours of community service, and mandatory psychological counseling. You are ordered to pay restitution to the victim for medical and therapy expenses. A permanent restraining order is hereby issued, prohibiting you from coming within 500 feet of Mrs. Christina Scow or the Scow residence. Any violation of this order will result in immediate incarceration." It wasn't the maximum sentence, but it was justice nonetheless. Marcia would have a felony conviction on her record. She'd have to report to a probation officer. She'd have to do community service and counseling, and most importantly, she could never come near Mom again. The divorce was finalized a month after the criminal case concluded. Janet had been right. It was straightforward. I kept the house, our savings, everything. Marcia was entitled to nothing after what she'd done. The judge in the divorce case had read the criminal case file and had no sympathy for her claims. Marriage is supposed to be a partnership built on love and trust, the divorce judge said. You violated both. This divorce is granted with prejudice. When I got home after that final hearing, Mom was in the garden. She'd been working on it for weeks, planting flowers and vegetables, bringing life back to a space that had been neglected during her ordeal. It's over, I told her. All of it. The divorce is final. Marcia is officially, legally, permanently out of our lives. Mom stood up, dirt on her hands and her knees, and just hugged me. We stood there in the garden while the afternoon sun slanted through the trees, and I felt something release in my chest that I hadn't even realized I'd been holding. Thank you, she whispered. Thank you for believing me. Thank you for fighting for me. Thank you for being my son. You never have to thank me for that. You're my mother. Protecting you isn't optional. It's who I am. That night I sat in what used to be our bedroom, mine and Marcia's, but which I'd completely redecorated since she left. New furniture, new bedding, new everything. No traces of her remained anywhere in the house. I thought about the man I'd been a year ago, the man who'd brought his grieving mother home out of love and duty, the man who'd trusted his wife completely, the man who'd been blind to the monster sleeping beside him. I'd made a terrible mistake in marrying Marcia. I'd let a predator into my home and given her access to the person I loved most in the world. That was on me. That would always be on me. But I'd also made it right. I'd trusted my instincts when everything in me wanted to believe the comfortable lie. I'd gathered evidence. I'd protected Mom. I'd fought through the legal system to ensure justice. I'd chosen my mother over my marriage without hesitation. I married the wrong woman. That was the truth. I'd chosen someone who was capable of cruelty I couldn't have imagined. Someone who'd smiled at me while planning my mother's torture. Someone who'd shared my bed while making another human being's life a living hell. But I could still be the right son. I could still protect and love and support my mother through her healing. I could still make sure her remaining years were filled with peace and safety and joy. I could still be the person she deserved. And that's exactly what I was going to do. 1 year later, I stood in the kitchen making coffee and watched through the window as Mom knelt in the garden, pruning roses. She was wearing gardening gloves and an old sun hat, humming something I couldn't quite hear, completely absorbed in her work. The morning light caught her face, and I realized with a start that she looked younger than she had a year ago. Healthier, vibrant, alive. It was hard to believe this was the same woman who'd been a shell of herself just 12 months earlier. The woman who'd barely eaten, barely slept, barely existed. Now she was thriving in ways that made my heart swell every single day. She'd gained back the weight she'd lost, and then some. Her arms had strength again. Her face had color. Most importantly, her eyes had light in them. The kind of light that comes from feeling safe and loved and valued. The nightmares had stopped about 6 months ago. She still saw Dr. Chen once a month, but now their sessions were about maintaining wellness rather than healing trauma. Mom said she liked having someone to talk to who understood what she'd been through, and I encouraged her to keep going as long as she found it helpful. She'd rejoined her book club and became one of its most active members. Every Tuesday evening, she'd come home with opinions about whatever novel they'd read, excited to tell me about the discussions they'd had. Margaret had become her best friend again, and they talked on the phone at least 3 times a week. Mom had also started volunteering at the senior center downtown, helping organize activities and teaching a weekly gardening class. I have knowledge to share, she'd told me. And after everything that happened, I want to make sure other seniors feel valued and connected. Isolation is dangerous. She was right about that. The more I learned about elder abuse, the more I understood that isolation was both a warning sign and a weapon abusers used. Cut someone off from their support system, and they become easier to control. That realization had led me to start something new myself. 6 months ago, I'd founded a support group for adult children who were caring for aging parents. We met twice a month in the community center, and the turnout had grown from 5 people at the first meeting to over 20 regulars now. We talked about the challenges of caregiving, the stress, the guilt, the exhaustion. But we also talked about warning signs, how to recognize when a caregiver, whether it's a spouse or a hired aide or a family member, might be abusing the elderly person in their care. Watch for isolation, I'd tell the group. If your parent suddenly stops answering calls or seeing friends, that's a red flag. Watch for unexplained injuries, weight loss, changes in medication without doctor approval. Watch for fear responses, and most importantly, listen when they try to tell you something's wrong, even if they can't say it directly. Some people in the group had their own horror stories. Others were just trying to navigate the complexity of caring for aging parents while managing their own lives. But everyone found value in having a space where they could talk honestly about the challenges without judgment. Mom had come to speak at one of the meetings. I hadn't asked her to. She'd volunteered. She stood in front of 20 strangers and told them what had happened to her. Not all of it, not the worst details, but enough. Enough for them to understand that abuse could happen anywhere, to anyone, even in a home where it seemed like everything was fine. I couldn't tell my son what was happening, she'd said, not because he wouldn't have believed me, but because I was afraid. My abuser had convinced me that speaking up would make everything worse. She'd isolated me from my friends. She'd made me doubt my own mind. She'd threatened me with losing the one person I loved most. That's how abuse works. It makes you feel like you have no options, no voice, no power. There wasn't a dry eye in the room when she finished. Afterward, 3 people came up to her privately. One woman whispered that she thought her mother-in-law was being abused by her son. We gave her resources, phone numbers for adult protective services, advice on how to document what she was seeing. That conversation might save a life. That's what Mom and I told ourselves. That's why we kept showing up, kept speaking out, kept trying to raise awareness. Mom had also started speaking at elder abuse awareness events organized by the county. She was good at it, compelling, authentic, powerful. People listened when she talked because she was living proof that it was possible to survive, to heal, to reclaim your life after experiencing something so devastating. I want other victims to know they're not alone, she told me after her first speaking event. I want them to know it's not their fault, and I want their loved ones to know what to look for. If I can prevent even one person from going through what I went through, then sharing my story is worth it. Our own relationship had deepened in ways I couldn't have imagined. We'd always been close, but now there was a level of trust and understanding that felt sacred. We'd been through hell together and come out the other side, that bonds people in ways nothing else can. We cooked together most evenings. Mom would teach me Dad's old recipes, the ones she'd always made but I'd never learned. We'd chop vegetables and stir sauces and talk about everything and nothing. Sometimes we'd talk about Dad, remembering him with laughter instead of tears. Sometimes we'd talk about the future, places Mom wanted to travel, projects she wanted to tackle in the garden, books she was excited to read. We had movie nights every Friday. Mom would make popcorn the old-fashioned way, on the stove, with real butter. We'd curl up on the couch under blankets and watch classic films, the kind Dad used to love. Sometimes we'd cry at the sad parts. Sometimes we'd laugh until our sides hurt. Always, we'd feel grateful to have each other. We hosted family gatherings now, too. My cousins, my aunt, Mom's old friends. Our house had become a hub for the people we loved. Mom would cook elaborate meals, smiling and laughing as she served food and told stories. The house that had once felt like a prison to her was now her sanctuary, filled with light and love and the sound of people enjoying themselves. Last month, on what would have been Dad's 70th birthday, we'd had a celebration in his honor. We invited everyone who'd known him, cooked all his favorite foods, told stories, looked at old photos. Mom had cried, but they were good tears, healing tears. Your father would be so proud of you, she'd told me that night. Proud of the man you've become. Proud of how you protected me. Proud of how you chose what was right over what was easy. He'd be proud of you too, I'd said, for surviving, for healing, for taking back your life. Now, standing in the kitchen a year after everything had fallen apart and been rebuilt, I carried my coffee outside to join her in the garden. She looked up as I approached, her face breaking into a smile. Morning, honey. Isn't it beautiful out here? It is, I agreed, sitting on the garden bench she'd installed last month. You've done an amazing job with this space. It's therapeutic, she said, moving to prune another rose bush. There's something about helping things grow that helps me grow too, if that makes sense. It makes perfect sense. She worked in comfortable silence for a while, and I sipped my coffee and watched. The garden was indeed beautiful, full of flowers and vegetables, butterflies and bees, life in every corner. It was a perfect metaphor for Mom herself, something that had been neglected and dying, now blooming with careful attention and love. I've been thinking, Mom said, setting down her pruning shears, about how lucky I am. Lucky? I know that sounds strange given everything that happened, but I am lucky. Because you believed me. Because you took action. Because you had the resources and knowledge to get me out. Not every victim of elder abuse has that. Some of them never escape. Some of them die still trapped in those situations. Mom, no. Let me finish. I'm lucky because I survived. I'm lucky because I have you. I'm lucky because I get to have this. She gestured around the garden. This beautiful life. These golden years that could have been stolen from me. I'm lucky because I get to wake up every morning without fear. That's not something every abuse survivor can say. I set down my coffee and went to hug her. She held me tight. This strong, resilient woman who'd been broken and put herself back together with help. I'm the lucky one, I said. I got to save you. I got to help you heal. I got to watch you reclaim your life and become even stronger than before. She pulled back and looked at me with those eyes that were finally clear of shadows. We saved each other, I think. She was right. In protecting her, I'd found my purpose. In healing, she'd taught me what real strength looked like. We'd saved each other. That afternoon, we made plans for the week ahead. Mom had her book club on Tuesday. I had my support group meeting on Wednesday. Thursday, we were cooking dinner together. Friday was movie night. Saturday, Mom was speaking at an elder abuse awareness event at the county courthouse, and I was going with her to show support. Sunday, we'd decided, would be a day for us. Maybe we'd drive to the coast. Maybe we'd just spend the day here in the garden, enjoying each other's company. As the sun began to set that evening, we sat together on the garden bench, watching the sky turn orange and pink. "Want to hear a terrible joke?" I asked. "Always," Mom said, smiling. "Why did the scarecrow win an award?" "Why?" "Because he was outstanding in his field." Mom groaned and laughed at the same time. "That's terrible. Your father would have loved it." "He would have," I agreed. We sat there as the light faded, and I thought about everything we'd been through. The nightmare of Marcia's abuse, the horror of those videos, the pain of watching Mom break and then slowly heal, the satisfaction of justice, the joy of watching her bloom again. My mother gave me life. That was a biological fact, but what she'd given me in the past year was so much more than that. She'd taught me about resilience, about forgiveness, not for Marcia, but for ourselves, about the importance of speaking up, speaking out, protecting those who can't protect themselves. The least I could do was give her peace, dignity, and safety in return. These were supposed to be her golden years, the time when she could relax, enjoy life, be free from stress and fear. For a while, Marcia had stolen that from her, but we'd taken it back, and I was going to make sure these years shined as brightly as they should, as brightly as she deserved. "Peter," Mom said quietly, "thank you for everything, for believing me, for saving me, for helping me rebuild, for still being here." "Mom, I'll always be here. Always. You're my mother." "Protecting you isn't a burden or an obligation. It's a privilege." She squeezed my hand. "I love you, son." "I love you too, Mom. If you're reading this, if you're watching this, if any part of our story resonates with you, please listen to what I'm about to say. If you have aging parents, please watch for the signs. Watch for isolation. Watch for unexplained injuries or weight loss. Watch for fear in their eyes. Watch for changes in their behavior. Believe them when something feels wrong, even if they can't tell you directly. Even if the evidence is subtle. Even if it's someone you trust who might be hurting them. Believe them. Because the people who once protected us deserve our protection now. The people who gave us life deserve to live their final years with peace and dignity and safety. They deserve to be believed, to be valued, to be loved without conditions. My mother survived. But not all victims do. Some suffer in silence for years. Some die before anyone realizes what's happening. Some never escape. Don't let that happen to someone you love. Pay attention. Ask questions. Trust your instincts. And if something seems wrong, act on it. Because sometimes the difference between life and death, between suffering and healing, is one person who believes and takes action. Be that person. I was, and I got my mother back. That's the greatest gift I could have ever received. If this story touched your heart, if it made you think, if it opened your eyes to something you hadn't considered before, please hit the like button. It means the world to me to know that Mom's story is reaching people and making a difference. Subscribe to this channel so you don't miss the next life stories I'll be sharing. Real stories, important stories, stories that matter. And please tell me in the comments where you're watching from and what time it is there right now. I love knowing which corner of the world is listening to our story, and it helps me feel connected to all of you who are on this journey with me. If you know someone with aging parents, please share this story with them. Share it with adult children who are caregivers. Share it with anyone who might benefit from understanding the warning signs of elder abuse. You never know. Your share might save someone's life. It might give someone the courage to speak up. It might help someone recognize what's happening in their own family. If you've had a similar experience, if you've had to protect a loved one, if you've discovered abuse, if you've helped someone escape a dangerous situation, I want to hear your story. Share it in the comments. Your experience might help someone else who's going through the same thing right now. We're stronger together. We heal together. We protect each other. If you're in immediate danger or witnessing active abuse, call 911. Don't wait. Don't hesitate. Every moment matters. If you suspect something but aren't sure, document what you're seeing. Take photos of injuries. Keep a journal of concerning behaviors. Talk to the elderly person's doctor. Contact adult protective services in your area. It's better to report and be wrong than to stay silent and let abuse continue. Remember, elder abuse thrives in silence. It survives in isolation. It depends on people looking the other way or making excuses or not wanting to get involved. Don't be one of those people. Be the person who speaks up. Be the person who takes action. Be the person who saves a life. My mother was one of the lucky ones. She survived, she escaped, she healed. But there are countless elderly people right now who are suffering in silence, who are trapped in abusive situations, who are praying that someone will notice and help. You could be that someone. Watch for the signs. Believe victims when they try to tell you something's wrong. Trust your instincts. Take action. Because the people who once protected us, who held our hands when we were small, who kept us safe, who sacrificed for us, they deserve our protection now. They deserve to live their final years with dignity and peace and safety. They deserve to be believed. They deserve to be valued. They deserve to be loved. Those who once held our hands now need us to hold theirs. That's not a burden. That's a privilege. That's love in its purest form. Thank you for listening to our story. Thank you for caring. Thank you for being part of the solution. I'll see you in the next life story. With love and respect, Peter. Always remember, at Virtuous Stories, we love you.